Joe Biden's been using his final days in office to promote his achievements and defend his legacy. But while doing so, he made a stunning admission in an exclusive interview with Lawrence O'Donnell. This is what he said when he was asked about the first time he used the word ceasefire with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
When I went to Israel, immediately after their attack by Hamas, 8 days later, whatever it was, and I told him we were going to help. And I said, but Bibi, I said, you can't be carpet bombing these communities. And he said to me, well, you did it. You carpet bombed, not his exact words, but you carpet bombed Berlin. You dropped a nuclear weapon. You killed thousands of innocent people because you had to in order to win a war. I said, but that's why we came up with the UN. New deals by which what we would do relative to civilians and military.
And just to be clear, Benjamin Netanyahu is now a man wanted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court. That Biden statement may be one day used against him in a court of law. But what does it say about Joe Biden? He admitted that he knew what Netanyahu was planning to do to the Palestinian civilian population in Gaza all the way back in October of 2023. And yet he still supported it. While it's revealing that Biden is openly admitting he knew what Netanyahu's intentions were, it really was not a mystery. Israeli leaders were saying them out loud. Their rhetoric was used as a basis for South Africa's genocide case against Israel in the International Court of Justice. And in January of last year, the ICJ found that Israel was plausibly committing genocide, a finding Israel immediately dismissed. But the dangerous rhetoric wasn't just happening in Israeli society. And just like after 9/11 and the lead up to the Iraq War, violent rhetoric and bigotry was also mixed with misinformation and disinformation right here in the U.S. And just like the Iraq War, it came from both the media and the White House.
I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children.
Of course, the White House had to immediately correct Joe Biden there and tell reporters that he had actually not seen any evidence of this. But Biden repeated that same false claim again just a month later. Another thing that's notable about Biden now, saying he first mentioned ceasefire to Netanyahu in October of 23, is that it is the opposite of what he was telling the American people at the time. In fact, here's what the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, said in that same month when she was asked what the president thought of Congresswomen Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Cori Bush calling for a ceasefire.
We believe they're wrong. We believe they're repugnant, and we believe they're disgraceful.
A month later, as the Palestinian death toll was rapidly climbing, Joe Biden was asked directly about the prospects for a ceasefire.
What are the chances of a Gaza ceasefire? None. No possibility.
But then something changed. Polls began to show that most Americans, and especially in Biden's base, were against that disastrous policy. Hundreds of black pastors warned Biden that he would cost Democrats the election by supporting Israel's assault on Gaza. Several members of the Biden administration resigned in protest, sharing their stories on this show and others. American college students and people all around the world started protesting. And in Michigan, the Uncommitted movement organized over 100,000 voters in that swing state to push Biden to stop Netanyahu and to save his presidency. So without a clear explanation, the Biden administration changed their rhetoric, and they were now supposedly for a ceasefire. And days before the Michigan primary, this was the president right here in New York eating an ice cream with Seth Meyers.
My national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
For the next several months, the Israeli press regularly published stories about how it was Netanyahu that was sabotaging the ceasefire and hostage release talks every time. But here at home, Antony Blinken would constantly tell the American public that it was Hamas. I regularly warned on this show that it wasn't deep fakes that would make Biden look weak and pathetic. It was Netanyahu. He would taunt Joe Biden with videos like this one, complaining that U.S. weapons weren't getting there in time, and the Biden administration would then send more. Biden told my colleague, Jonathan Capehart, that Israel invading the densely packed Palestinian city of Rafah was his red line. And months later, NBC News got inside and reported that Rafah had been turned into a ghost town and now uninhabitable. Palestinians and human rights groups warned that Israel was following through on their threats to stop humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza. And rather than forcing Israel to allow aid to get into Gaza, Biden announced that the U.S. military would build a floating pier on the Gaza coast. But that pier quickly turned into an international embarrassment. And due to bad weather, it only operated for 20 days before it was dismantled. It barely got any aid in and still cost taxpayers $230 million. And unfortunately, that's not all that we lost. On October 31st, 23-year-old Sergeant Kawandris Stanley died from injuries he suffered while serving on that temporary Gaza pier mission. And you've probably never even heard of his name. Sergeant Stanley's death was only made public by the Department of Defense 5 days after it happened on Election Day, predictably buried in a chaotic news cycle. At one point during a flare-up in the region, Biden declared, "If you harm an American, we will respond." So who will have to answer for Sergeant Stanley's death? And what about Jacob Flickinger, a U.S. citizen and humanitarian aid worker killed by Israel in its strike on World Central Kitchen aid workers last April? What about Aisha Noor Aigi, a 26-year-old American citizen from Seattle, shot in the head and killed by an Israeli soldier at a West Bank protest last September? Time and time again, we were told that empathy was Joe Biden's superpower, and time again, he showed none, not for the tens of thousands of Palestinians killed at the hands of Israel or even for those American citizens. Aisha Noor Aigi's family says that they still have not gotten a condolence phone call from the Biden administration. We were also told that Biden and Harris were working tirelessly for a ceasefire. But the Biden administration vetoed 4 Gaza ceasefire resolutions at the United Nations Security Council. And now that a ceasefire has gone through, reporting shows that it was President-elect Trump advisor Steve Witkoff that played a big role in pushing it through. But it was one of Biden's own diplomats that shed some new light on the impact of Biden's Middle East policy. Biden's ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, was quoted last week saying, "Standing with Israel for these past 15 months, with huge opposition in the media and parts of his own party, you could argue that it contributed to making his challenge for re-election insurmountable." Well, guess what? A new poll last week actually backed that up. The survey from YouGov found that 29% of Americans who supported Biden in 2020 sat out the 2024 election specifically due to U.S. support for Israel's war on Gaza. Keep in mind, Democrats lost the race due to a huge drop-off in voter turnout on their side. While Joe Biden secured some major domestic achievements for this country, he will sadly be remembered for 2 things. First, the mass killing and utter destruction of Gaza that was made with American weapons and diplomatic support. And second, handing the keys to the White House back to a MAGA movement that is now stronger and more dangerous than ever. A legacy of shame and infamy. With me now to unpack all of this is MSNBC political analyst Peter Beinart. He is the author of the Beinart Notebook on Substack and has an upcoming book called Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza. Peter, it's good to have you with us. I want to ask you, and I made the case for how I see Joe Biden's legacy, certainly in foreign policy, but what do you see as Joe Biden's legacy when it comes to the Middle East and foreign policy?
I mean, the tragedy is that the centerpiece of Joe Biden's foreign policy and domestic policy was going to be the rule of law. He was going to challenge not only the Donald Trumps of the world, but the Xi Jinpings of the world and the Vladimir Putins of the world around what they called the liberal international order, the idea that you couldn't attack your neighbors, that all people had the right to equal rights and equal dignity. That was going to be the center, the moral centerpiece of his administration. And his policies on Gaza tore the heart out of that because the world could see that the U.S. was violating the very things that it claimed to believe in, the international rule of law, the idea that all human beings deserve protection, the idea that Palestinian lives are equal to Israeli lives. All of those things were catastrophically damaged and have undermined America's ability to fight authoritarianism around the world and at home as well.
What did you make of Jack Lew's comments there and this idea that if Israel is now seen as a political liability for Democrats, that may force them to change policy in the future? I'm not sure that's what he intended with those comments, but that's how I saw them, that the president took this position of being staunchly supportive of Israel to the detriment of his own party and to the future of America?
I think there's going to be a huge fight inside the Democratic Party, and we'll see it in 2028 in the Democratic primary. There are going to be some politicians, I think, who see this huge gap between where Democratic voters are. Democratic voters don't support unconditional support for Benjamin Netanyahu and this Israeli government. They profoundly oppose it. There's a big gap between Democratic voters and Democratic politicians. There will be Democratic presidential candidates who try to speak to that, and I think there will be a titanic fight within the party over the future of policy towards Israel and Palestine.
Earlier today, Joe Biden gave what are likely his final remarks in South Carolina. He touched on the importance of history and said, quote, "Some injustices are so heinous that they can never be buried, no matter how hard people try." If I were to use that same logic, how important will documenting the suffering of the Palestinians and the Israeli hostages be as both sides try to find some form of reconciliation after all this?
This is going to be something that Americans and people around the world are talking about for generations. If you just look at the number of children killed in Gaza, you compare it, may go down as so far the greatest human rights catastrophe of the 21st century, certainly per capita. And it's one that was actually facilitated by American weapons and American diplomatic support. That is going to haunt American foreign policy and Americans for generations.